Hello, welcome to Darren Bent's England shirt swap with Carlin here at the Dover Castle pub in London, where today I'm joined by an absolute legend, a man with probably the most famous celebration on a football pitch. And with 78 England caps to his name, today's guest is the one and only Stuart Pearce. And don't forget to watch and enjoy every single game at the World Cup with Carlin. Stuart, thanks for joining me. We'll jump straight in with the Italian 90 shirt. I'm guessing that brings back some nice memories.
Fantastic memories. My first major tournament, a shirt that I really like, and you know what it's like with your shirts, that they bring back memories straight away, and this one certainly does that.
When you look at this shirt, I mean, you played with some unbelievable players in this tournament. What player do you think of pretty much first and foremost when you see that iconic shirt?
Gascoigne. Gascoigne was synonymous from that tournament. Des Walker as well. I think there was a few of the players went and enhanced their reputations. Those two definitely did, coming away from the World Cup, and probably, well, both of them ended up going and playing in Italy afterwards, so that was the magnitude of how good they were.
If I can remember rightly, there was a lot of pressure going into this tournament for this team, and I think the manager Bobby Robson at the time was under pressure. I mean, what was it like? Because we know it's a lot different now than it was back then, as going into a major tournament.
Well, Bobby Robson was going to retire, so that was already decided beforehand, so we knew it was going to be his last game whenever we went out the tournament, so that was a big driver because the players loved him a bit. Fantastic ambassador, a great coach, and his enthusiasm that, you know, from Ipswich part of the world, you'll know, you know, he's a legend of the game. And the crowd trouble that was prevalent in the back end of the 80s going into the World Cup. I know that the press were not on the players' side in any way, shape or form, and the sports minister, they were talking about pulling the England team out of the tournament. That's when we were on the ground already at pre-camp in Italy, so there was a big cloud over the top of the team, and it was probably only the performances of the team and the behaviour of the fans that got better and better as the tournament went on, that probably we ended up coming back from the tournament with a real feel-good factor about the squad.
Now, you mentioned him already, Paul Gascoigne. He had an unbelievable tournament. Talk to me about Paul Gascoigne. I mean, how good was he? And have you got any stories about him, maybe off the pitch, that we wouldn't know? That you can tell?
Well, yeah. Firstly, he's the best I've ever played with. I was fortunate enough to play most of my career with Gazza. I made my debut probably about 6 months before he did. Gazza's played 58 times for England, been on the losing team if you discard penalty shootouts on 4 occasions, so that probably tells you everything about Gazza. We arrived in Italy to our pre-camp, and Bobby Robson on the first day sat everyone down and said, look, we got 7 games if we want to win the tournament, 90-degree heat, you must conserve energy. So everyone's took that on board. So 2 days later, I'm sat by the swimming pool, and bear in mind, in those days the squad wasn't just at a hotel with just the squad, it was the members of the public as well. And there was a commotion to the left of me as I was sat by the swimming pool, and as I looked over, Gazza had gone to the toilet, mummified himself in bog roll and was bouncing on the diving board, jumped into the swimming pool, swum a length underwater, come up the other side, the toilet roll had got soaked and come off him, he was naked, jumped out the pool naked and walked off through all the other guests in the at the hotel. So that night Bobby said, when you finish your dinner, everyone stays in here. So I thought to myself, this is going to be interesting to see how he deals with Gazza. And he was brilliant, Bobby Robson. He just looked out over the room like that. He never got eye contact with anyone. And he said, gentlemen, there's an idiot amongst us. And everyone started laughing. All of us knew the idiot, but strangely enough, the idiot was looking round Gazza to see who the idiot was in the room, you know. It's incredible, but he was just brilliant to be around all the time, you know. I think when you're away at a tournament, you know yourself, it's good to have someone that keeps everything bubbling along, and especially someone who's arguably one of the best players in the world.
The missed penalty. I mean, talk to me about the emotions at that particular point when you missed it.
We've probably done ad hoc practice in regard to penalties. I think it's more of an exact science nowadays. So it was down to a volunteer process. Lineker was a brilliant penalty taker, so you knew he'd take a penalty. And then really it was just down to volunteers who put their name forward. I was one of those, made my mind up to go straight down the middle with power, and the goalkeeper's got his legs to it. And for us, many emotions come there. My first tournament, you don't know what to expect. You've missed a penalty that put you out when you were so close to going to a major final. Bobby Robson's last game, and he gave me my first cap, and you know what it's like when a manager gives you your first cap, you've got that buy-in with him. So that was there, and by the time we'd gone on that journey in the tournament, there's a real togetherness amongst the group. I got pulled in for a drugs test straight after with Schultz. Schultz walked in, had a quick wee and left, and there was me and 2 German players sat in a room for an hour and a half after I'd just missed a World Cup semi-final. And credit to them, I mean, they were so humble. They didn't say a word for an hour and a half. We all sat there in silence, and they just won a World Cup semi-final, by the way. And I thought it really taught me a great lesson in how to be humble in success, if you like. And a few years later, obviously, when I scored a penalty at Wembley, the first thing I did, rather than celebrate, was go to the player and the opposition that missed, because of my experience.
How long did it take you to get over missing that penalty? Because
I'm still in counselling, my friend. Don't worry about that. I don't think you ever do. You always look back and think to yourself, I was desperate to get back into club football. I know that. Once we landed at Luton Airport when we got back from Italy, and there was 250,000 people lining the streets. It took us 6 hours to get from Luton Airport to a hotel in Luton where our cars were. This was the magnitude of it, and when you're away, it wasn't social media then, there was none of that, so you didn't know the effect back home. And we landed as a beaten semi-finalist with 250,000 people. It was just madness, it really was. I've never seen anything like it. And I'd missed a penalty and whatever, and I just wanted to get back home, put my feet up for a week and get back in at Nottingham Forest and start sort of prepping for the next season. But the next season, because I almost had something to prove to everybody, because I come back under an internal cloud, if you like, my best season was the following season. You know, I got dogs abuse at all grounds I went to, but for me that was brilliant. It just inspired me. Ended up scoring 16 goals, no penalties, and by far my best season.
Right, on to shirt number 2, and it's our iconic home shirt from Euro 96. But before we obviously talk about the penalty, your late inclusion into the squad?
Yeah, I mean, basically I had a phone call we're going to talk about the tournament in 96. I had a phone call when Terry Venables first took the job in 94. And basically he said to me, look, you're not going to be the first choice left back. Bear in mind, I think I was 33 years old at the time, and he was expecting me to say, fine, okay, I'll retire, thanks for the call. And I said, well, if you think I'm good enough to be in the squad, I'll be there. And he said, well, yeah, of course. So he's obviously expecting me to retire. I didn't do that, so I was almost a bit part player. I played the odd game. I supported Graeme, the left back. And basically I had to wait my time. So for those 2 years, from 94 to 96, I had to sort of be very patient until it was about Christmas 95. He broke his ankle, and I got my opportunity to get in the team, firstly as a left back and then as a left centre half.
With it being a home tournament, did you feel added pressure?
Yes, I think so, because obviously the tournament prior to that was 1990, where we were so away from any emotion that was going on back home. Didn't qualify.
USA 94.
Exactly, missed out on that one. So going into a home tournament was really important. I mean, I used to work in the borough of Brent, where Wembley is. You know, that's where I sort of learnt my trade as an electrician. I worked at Wembley, so I know, and I lived 2-3 miles away from there. So it was almost a home stadium for me in some ways. But I think the pressure of a home tournament is fantastic. Once you get momentum, you're okay. When you go into it, it's quite restricting to start with, and the earlier games we didn't play particularly well. But once we got momentum, my goodness, did the fans come to the party.
Well, the couple of games that kind of stick out in my mind when I think of Euro 96, well, certainly one of them was Scotland. Now, the Paul Gascoigne celebration, first of all, the goal is world-class. Paul Gascoigne at his absolute best. But talk to me about the celebration, the dentist chair celebration. I mean, had he spoke about that much beforehand? Did you guys know he was going to do that?
Well, firstly, we go back to Hong Kong, where the dentist chair scenario sprung up from, and obviously a few of the boys went out. I was a lot more sensible than that and decided to stay in that night because I saw what was coming. And basically, you know, after that, the media are all over the players. They wanted Gazza kicked out the team. You know, never lose track of that.
I think I read that, I think I remember reading that,
Wanted him dropped, kicked out the team, he was a disgrace, all of those things. And it was that goal and that performance in the Scotland game that really changed public opinion and media opinion about Gazza. And Gazza, it was his way of poking fun at the media that were trying to get him out the squad. And I don't know. I don't think it was pre-planned, but Gaz has just run there and lied down, and I think all the rest of the boys have arrived and done the celebration with him, and I think it was a fitting way of really. Well, firstly, Dave Seaman saved that happened a couple of moments earlier. Then all of a sudden, the brilliance of him was just there for all to see.
And for yourself personally, we have to speak about now the penalty against Spain. I mean, first and foremost, emotions.
Yeah.
When that goal went in. I mean, what went through your mind? Did you go back to 1990, or did you just let loose? I mean, the celebration is iconic.
It sort of come from nowhere, not pre-planned. You know what I mean? I think relief maybe. I remember. At the end of, it's like you go into extra time and all of a sudden your mind starts thinking about a penalty shootout.
Thinking, do I get hamstring problems? I've got cramp.
And I ended up thinking to myself, if I don't get to Terry Venables on the halfway line and put my services forward, he'll probably overlook me because of my history with the missed one earlier. So I went up to him and said, look, I'll take the third penalty, and he looked at me and went, are you sure? This is what he said to me, unbelievably. I said, yeah, I think so. So anyway, when I walked up, you know what it's like, you do that walk from the halfway line to the penalty spot is an eternity in a penalty shootout.
I couldn't walk, I jogged there.
You're probably better off doing that and getting. But the walk was incredible, and the tension I felt around the stadium, it was as though the supporters were more nervous than I was, and make no mistake, I was nervous. But the tension I could feel from the terraces because of my history and whatever, and I think the relief certainly from myself, but also as well from the fans, you know what I mean, was there. I could just feel it. It was incredibly an emotional day.
On to the third and final shirt, Stuart, and it's one that kind of brings back painful memories, I think, for the fans. It's the away shirt from Euro 96. I mean, when you first saw this shirt, and you and the players, did you like this shirt or did you hate it straight from the get-go?
It's an interesting one. I mean, I quite like the colour grey, so I'm a little bit drawn to it, but I can understand why it polarises opinion. I've got a lot of people who either really like it or really dislike it, I like it because of the memories. I was playing at Wembley prior to the tournament in '96. I'd sort of made my mind up that I was going to retire from international football, so I think I was 35-ish at the time at that tournament. So I like the shirt because I like the performances and I like what it evoked around Wembley at the time, albeit we come out on a result against the Germans, which wasn't a good one.
You talked about the result against the Germans, and unfortunately you went out of the tournament. What was the feeling like in the dressing room afterwards?
One of those so near but so far away in many ways, we felt as though we'd brought the country together from a situation where the team weren't playing particularly well going into the tournament. All of a sudden we gained momentum. We had all the games obviously were in Wembley Stadium, so the Scotland game, the Dutch game, the Spanish game to get over the line in a penalty shootout, everything was going our way sort of thing, and the fans were just enjoying the tournament, and the more, as I say, the coach journey in and out of Wembley, there was ended up from a few people being on the street for the first game, there was thousands on the street. It was a brilliant tournament to be involved in, and almost the summer of football in many ways. The music scene was really, I'm into my music and Oasis and all that type of thing. It was all thrown in the mix, and it was just a fantastic tournament, and it's a shame. I mean, look back now at some of the highlights of the game that we played against West Germany, and it's incredible how we've hit a post in golden goal. Gaz has missed one that's flashed across the front of the goal. So, and I think the Dutch performance was good, and I think the performance against the Germans on that day was good.
Now, unfortunately for Gareth Southgate, he missed the penalty. I believe you were the first one to go up to him and console him. Did you try and help him? Because as he said, obviously you'd gone through it in 1990, he went through it in 96. I mean, how was he feeling at the time?
Well, Gareth's a team player, always has been, always the first to take responsibility for any problems, and probably one of the first to back away and let others take credit, and you see that in his management style now. I think it was good for Gareth. Sometimes people say, "Oh, don't worry about it. I know how you feel," and they don't. Not in that scenario, exactly. With me, he knew. We went back to the hotel that evening, and we sat and had something to eat and a couple of drinks, and our tournament was finished. And I sat with him, and when you look across the table and say, "Look, I know how you feel, mate," he actually knows I do know how you feel. So it was quite good, probably, to have a soulmate. And to be fair, we were good friends before that incident. We're probably firm friends after it because we followed the same footpath and we care about England.
Thanks for watching Darren Bent's England shirt swap, and don't forget to enjoy the football with Carling, the UK's #1 lager.